Okay, good evening, everyone. We're going to make a start. We've still got one or two people still dialing in, but we'll make a start. So let's go for the formalities. First of all, this is the first time we've done this way. So welcome to everyone. What you'll find is the people in the Civic Centre are independently connected, but all in the same room. So thanks for the efforts from the technicians today to getting us here. So for the rest of you, thank you for attending this virtual meeting of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee on Tuesday, the 8th of December. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Councillor James Flannery, and I am the chair of this committee. Councillor Rini Blow is the vice chair, also present tonight. Please note, this is an audio and video meeting. It is being recorded, and the stream will also be live on YouTube. The web address for this is displayed on the agenda for the meeting and can be found on the council's website. Members are asked to keep their microphone on mute and only unmute when they wish to speak. Only one microphone across both the Shield Room and Microsoft Teams can be active at any one time. Officers will present each report, after which I will bring the report into committee for discussion. If any committee member wishes to speak, you should unmute your microphone and say your name, use the raise your hand feature, or use the chat function in the top right hand corner to notify our moderator that you wish to speak. I will then invite you in. After the committee has considered the report, I will read out any representations made by members not on the committee or members of the public. Our legal advisor, Taz, will repeat the motion before the vote is taken to ensure everyone is aware of what is being voted on. We will take the vote as agreed unless any member indicates that they disagree with the proposal. If the technology fails, then I will adjourn the meeting for several minutes and try and resolve the issue. If it's not possible, a new date and time will be organised. Please, can I ask all members to confirm they can see, hear and speak before the meeting begins? I will carry out a roll call alphabetically. So first one, Councillor Alty.
No.
Can you hear, Jackie?
I can hear.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Yes, I can hear.
Councillor Blow. I can just really, yeah. Councillor Forrest.
Yeah, roger that.
Councillor Hughes. You think you're muted, Cliff?
Yeah, I'm here.
Good man. Councillor Martin.
I'm here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Maud.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Jackie. Councillor Monyu.
Here.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Yes, all okay.
Thank you. Councillor Rainsbury is not here tonight, I believe. Okay, thank you. And our officers, Tasneem.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Chris.
Present, Chair.
Steph.
Present.
Ben.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And we've got Ruth, who's our facilitator tonight, and it's the first one she's done for South Ribble in this way, so welcome, Ruth. Okay, let's go straight to the agenda, please. Apologies. Any apologies, Ben?
Apologies received for Councillor Rainsbury. I was the only one.
Thank you very much. Good. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest recorded? No. No. Okay. All right. Excuse us 1 minute. Okay. Thanks, Amy. Right, minutes of the last meeting. We have the minutes of the last meeting, which was Tuesday, the 10th of March. They're here for approval. Do we have a seconder, please? Rini Blow. Thank you, Rini. Seconded. Okay. Excuse me 1 minute. How are we doing this, Ruth? Yeah, okay. Anyone against approving the minutes? Okay, good. Thank you. They're approved. Go on to the next one. Right, minutes of the licensing panel, which was a panel which we had on the 19th of November. We've got those minutes here. I need a seconder for them, please.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thanks, Jackie. Okay. So anyone, anything other than approval? Thank you. They're approved. Okay, item 5. Item 5. Okay, Chris, over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. At the last meeting of the committee on the 10th of March 2020, members considered a report put forward from officers proposal the adoption of the use of the National Register for Hackney and Private Hire Vehicles Revocations and Refusals Register to the current South Wales Borough Council taxi licensing policy. Currently, when the licence department receive a new application for a Hackney carriage or private hire driver's licence, the application form asks the applicant, have they ever been refused or had a licence revoked in the past? Currently, if drivers do not disclose this information, there is often no way for the licensing authority to find this information out. Vital intelligence about an applicant's past behaviour is being missed. An individual might be able to get a new licence despite having their licence taken away elsewhere. Also, if a driver is refused or revoked by this authority, there is a risk they could go to another authority and apply without disclosing the information to the new authority. This has been a recognised problem for some time within the licensing authorities throughout the country. Government have repeatedly been asked over the years to create a platform for licensing authorities so they can share this information between themselves. The Local Government Association commissioned the National Anti-Fraud Network, NAFN, to develop and host a register called the NR3 to record all drivers that have either been refused a licence or had their licence revoked. We've proposed that all new and renewal applications received would have their details checked against the register to see if the applications have been refused or revoked by another authority. The NAFN system does not hold a reason why a person has been refused or revoked. That information would need to be shared between the two authorities. The information on the NAFN system is limited to the name, the date of birth, address and contact details, national insurance number, driving licence number, decision taken, date of decision, and date the decision became effective. If details on a person was found to be on the register by an authority, then it would be up to the two councils to share this information in line with the data sharing policies in line with GDPR. New applicants will be notified of the register making changes to the application on their online application forms. All existing drivers will be notified in writing, and all previously revoked or refused drivers would also be notified. Suggested templates of this can be found within the original report, attached to this report as background document 1, item 48 within the guidance document attached as Appendix 1. At the meeting on the 10th of March, officers proposed to update the taxi licensing policy to include the NR3 checks as mandatory requirements. Proposed policy wording can be found in section 15 of this report. Members received the report positively and agreed the register had been needed for some time. Members agreed that the adoption of the policy to be subject to a consultation exercise. This consultation took place between the 21st of September and the 2nd of November. The results of the consultation exercise have been extremely positive, as you can find within section 18 of this report. The full consultation feedback can be found attached to this report as Appendix 1. We received 39 responses in total. First question, do you agree with the licensing authority should use the NAFN register to check details of all new and renewal applications for Hackney private hire drivers licences to see if they have ever had a licence refused or revoked by another authority? 38 people were in favour to this question, with only one response of unsure. The second question of do you agree all current licensed drivers have either been refused or revoked by this authority to have details entered onto the NAFN register? Again, 38 was in favour, with only one response of unsure. The third question in general, do you agree with the council to formally adopt the use of the NAFN register for the two uses identified in the previous two questions? 37 people were in favour, with only 2 responses of unsure. We received no actual responses that were against the use of the register. Taking those figures into account, members are now asked to consider whether or not to forward the proposed changes to full council with a recommendation to adopt the changes to the taxi licensing policy in relation to use of the NAFN register. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Chris, thanks for that. Good report. Okay, I'm going to invite members for comment, please. As the usual way, if you want to make a comment, could you either raise your hand or make it known to us that you wish to speak? Thank you. Okay, first one, Councillor Martin, please.
Thanks, Chair. My maiden speech. I've had a discussion with officers earlier on today about the register. I believe it's whether authorities want to join the register or not is whether we will get the full information we perhaps need. But I do support the idea of going onto the register. And I was also reassured that if someone had been refused who's on our books already in the past and they are put on the register, then there is a possibility we could take action to ask them why they haven't declared their interest. So it's just A, to break the ice, Chair, and B, to thank the officers for this work, and I will support this. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Martin. Councillor Ogilvie, please. Still muted, Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, sorry about that, Chair. Yes, I support this proposal as well. There's just one bit of clarification I'd like. I did ask a question at the meeting away back in March about whether the council had any liabilities, legal liabilities, if we input information into the National Register incorrectly. We were promised a written refresh our memory of what the response to that question was. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that. Who would like to, Taz, would you like to take that one or?
Yeah, I can take that question. Apologies, Councillor Ogilvie. You're right. There was a situation where you'd asked a question. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get back to you given the COVID situation, and it's just something that's been missed. So apologise for that. So in respect of the response on that, yes, there would be potentially some liability in respect of that if there was any sort of future issues in respect of that inputting. So the inputting of that information is very basic. It's in respect of the name and address and date of birth, which obviously is taken from the application form, which the driver would fill out. So that information is obviously taken out from the application form, included into the register. So you know, hopefully there would be no mistakes in respect of that. But if there were any mistakes, then potentially there could be some liability, yes. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Ogilvie.
Alan, is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay, thanks. Yeah, just so that members are aware before we vote on this, that's all. Thanks.
Thanks for that. Councillor Jackie Alty.
Hi, just a clarification, really. I wondered, do we have any means of doing a retrospective addition to, you know, if kind of people just join up, if other councils join in the process and join the register, will we be doing a retrospective on the people that have passed through them that are currently sat and registered with us?
Okay, Chris.
I think for our retention policies, our information is kept for 6 years, so we will hold that information for 6 years. We'd have to check with the council's privacy policies whether we could share that, but the information is kept for 6 years as part of our retention policies. So we do still hold some information of the drivers who have been revoked and refused in the last 6 years.
Is that okay, Jackie? Okay. Councillor Forrest. Derek, you're on mute.
All right. Ryan, have we got any provision for taxi drivers to be able to inspect the record? Presumably, they will be aware of the existence of the database. Can they come back and request that they see what's been entered against their name to check it's accurate?
Chris or Taz?
The application forms, the drivers would be advised when they apply that the information could go onto the NAFM register. So when they make the application, it'll be in writing. So if they either apply on the internet or face-to-face through the contact centre, they'll either be advised by a contact centre officer or they would read that information themselves with a checkbox that they would have to tick to say they've read that information. So all new applicants would be advised. Anybody who was revoked or refused a licence by this authority would also be given that information in writing afterwards. The templates are actually in the report, the original report attached as an appendix. So they would be given that information. So yes, they would be notified in that way. So it would cover all new applicants as they apply, and then anybody who's currently on our books who would be revoked would then be written to afterwards.
Is that okay, Derek? Derek, is that okay?
Well, that's the question. The question was whether you could actually come along and say, could I see what you've got on the database now? I keep getting refused, and I don't know why.
Sorry, no, we wouldn't be able to show them. Only licensing officers would have an actual login to the system, so it's a secure system. Only registered users with a background password would be able to enter the actual NAF and register to look at that information. I think through security, they would have to be careful that drivers wouldn't be able to look at other drivers' information and that information be accessed by other people. So no, there's only logins for actual officers.
Derek, does that do it for you?
I mean, it does need some system because, of course, entries can be made wrongly. There can be two Joe Smiths who are taxi drivers who are sort of affected, and if you've got no means of coming back to be able to put it right, it effectively can be a black spot, can't it? And you become unemployable.
We're going to bring in Taz, Derek, to answer this, to finish this one off. Thank you.
Yeah,
Taz.
I think the way it will be covered is there's nothing stopping that individual driver making a subject access request in respect of, what information we hold on that register. So potentially they could make a subject access request, and obviously if we're able to, then we will release that information subject to any exemptions that may be applied. I hope that answers the question.
Derek, for the third time, is that okay? Still on mute, Derek.
In my view, it's not okay. It's a bit ridiculous to expect somebody to make a freedom of information request to find a sort of routine entry on a database. And other sort of databases do have facility for people to have a printout of what's entered against them. And I don't think it's very good that it isn't here.
Okay, Derek, what we're going to do, because you said you're not okay, we're just going to keep going. I'm going to bring in Taz and I'm going to bring in Chris.
A subject access request would allow that individual to provide, be provided with that information if they so wished. In terms of actually having access to the register, no, we wouldn't expect drivers to have access to that register because access is only for officers. So, unfortunately, that's not something we can, allow. Is there anything that you'd like to add, Chris?
I think if you looked at the scenario that, say I was a licensed driver at South Ribble and I'd been revoked, or I hadn't been revoked, and it was on the register that I had, and I'd gone for a taxi badge at Preston, and you wanted to query why that information was the case, I think you could go back to South Ribble and licensing officers would be able to access the system to see whether that information that's been entered is correct and accurate. So that's where they would go with that. They would come back to the original council that has put that person onto the register to check whether that information is accurate or not, and then go from there.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Taz. Councillor Molyneux.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just from a point of view of someone being revoked, would I not be right in assuming that they would get the information to tell them why they've been revoked? And therefore then they could object to whether it was right or wrong and then have it put right anyway, rather than having to apply for a freedom of information or something like that.
Thanks, Peter. Chris?
After the hearing that they had the licence revoked, there would be a decision notice sent to them through the post.
Okay, thanks for comments. Derek, just before we move on, what I'd suggest you do is if you want anything else on this, we can ask the officers to arrange to clarify anything else further. But we are going to have to go for a proposer and a seconder if we're going to move this agenda item on. Are you okay with that, Derek?
Yes, Chair, quite happy. Yep, carry on.
Okay, thank you. So can we take Councillor Martin as the proposer? Because you did say, Keith, that you were happy with that. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to propose that.
Thanks, Keith. And do we have a seconder?
Yes, I also said I was in favour of it, so I'll second it.
Thanks, Alan. Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder. So in the normal world we're in now of voting, what we're going to do is, if there's anyone not in favour of it, could you please let us know? And if that's the case, we'll then go to a name vote. But if you just let us, any dissenters on that, just let us know. Okay, no. Don, Ruth? Okay. Okay, so that's carried. So thank you everyone for that. Okay. Next item number 6, the modified vehicles consultation feedback. Again, it's over to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is regarding consultation feedback for modified vehicles on the Southwestern Council licensed fleet. So on the 12th of November 2019, members of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee received a report from officers highlighting issues with the current modified vehicles policy. That report can be found by following the link within the background documents of this report, which is item number 6 within the agenda. Members were advised that the current policy is burdensome to operators and proprietors of licensed vehicles. Currently, the majority of modified vehicles within the Southwestern Council licensed fleet are operated by Andrew Wallbanks Limited, who provides special needs transport to Lancashire County Council. In September 2019, it was agreed that all modified vehicles tested by Lancashire County Council, as the process of accuracy to identify vehicles was not working properly, would be inspected. During the inspections, licensing officers were present to understand the details of what was actually being tested. The main area of structural change on modified vehicles is the floor and the lifts. When the tracking in the floor is installed, it's bolted in as per the standard contained within the policy. The lifts are installed and are granted a LOLA, Lifting Operations and Lifting Equipment Regulations 1998 certificate. The MOT and roadworthiness certificate process should identify any regard to corrosion or rust within the vehicle. Over 60 vehicles were inspected in September 2019 by a qualified Lancashire County Council mechanic, and no vehicles tested had any issues of structural integrity of the conversions that have been made. At the meeting on the 12th of November 2019, officers proposed changes to the current policy that would only require vehicles that have been altered since the first manufacturer to be tested when first licensed and not upon every renewal, which is currently every 6 months. It's proposed that the current IVA test required as per the taxi licensing policy was not fit for purpose and is difficult to access should any changes to a test be performed by either a qualified mechanic by LCC or the South Borough Council depot. It's proposed that changes could be found within this section 13 of the report and Appendix 2 of background document 1. Members agreed at the meeting of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee that changes to the policy regarding modified vehicles should be subject to a consultation exercise. The results presented at a further meeting. On the 10th of March 2020, members of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee were advised that the consultation period had taken place throughout January and February of the same year. Feedback had been provided by the trade that the questions were too technical and the internet format was not accessible. Officers asked the committee to go out to consultation again on this matter, with the option of a paper format to increase accessibility. Members were advised that a report detailing the outcome of the consultation would be brought before the committee. At a future meeting, members agreed the consultation was to be redone. A new consultation took place between the dates of 21st of September 2020 and the 2nd of November 2020. The results of the consultation exercise have been extremely positive. As you can find within section 16 of this report, the full consultation feedback is also available as Appendix 1. 39 responses were received in total. First question. Current taxi licensing policy requires vehicles that have been modified since it was first manufactured to pass an additional test every 6 months. It is proposed to change the current policy to require one test as a vehicle is first licensed or if modified while licensed. The test would be performed either by Lancashire County Council or South Ribble Borough Council. Do you agree to change the policy for the requirement to be tested every 6 months to a one-off test when first licensed or modified? 37 people were in favour, only 2 responding saying unsure. The second question in the consultation. Currently, the taxi licensing policy requires modified vehicle proprietors to obtain an IVA certificate for the vehicle. We propose to change this requirement from an IVA in favour of a localised test by qualified engineers who will focus on all aspects of the modification. The test will be tailored to the private hire and hackney carriage vehicles and will test various aspects of the vehicle such as seats, tracking, passenger lifts. Do you agree to the change from the IVA test to a localised test tailored to private hire and hackney carriage vehicles? 35 people were in favour, with only 1 against and 3 unsure. Following this information being provided, members are now asked to consider whether to now forward the proposed changes to the full council with a recommendation to adopt the changes to the taxi licensing policy in relation to modified vehicles. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Chris, thanks again. Very comprehensive overview of the report. So I'm going to invite members now for any comments on item number 6. And the first hand raised here we have is, Ruth's going to pass it over to me. Thank you, Ruth. Is Councillor Martin. Keith.
Thanks, Chair. It's just confirmation, really. Any modification to a vehicle would have to sort of fit in with the construction and use regulations on that vehicle. So it's just the order of tests, really. I mean, obviously, if you modify your vehicle, you need to ensure it has it's inspected by an MOT examiner and then brought to any further inspection that we insist on. Is that the case?
Yes.
On the roadworthiness test that the council performed, it's a more stringent version of the it does record how many seats in the vehicle. So if the vehicle has been modified to change the number of seats within the vehicle, it would need to be.
Chris, I can't hear you.
No, I think you just need to.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry about that. So yeah, the roadworthiness certificate records how many seats are within the vehicle and the vehicle details. So any test which would be performed on the roadworthiness would need to know how many seats was in that vehicle.
Keith, is that okay?
Yeah, it would have to come before the actual roadworthiness certificate for that reason. So it should, in theory, fail the roadworthiness if it's been modified and not changed to say like on the D5.
Keith, that okay? Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Ogilvie, please.
Thanks, Chair. Again, it's just clarification, really. In relation to the replacement for the IVA, it mentions that it will be replaced by tests by local qualified engineers. Are we talking about multiple potential local qualified engineers? And if so, how do we ensure consistency of the test criteria that they will undertake?
Thank you, Chris.
The tests will only be performed at the depot at Bamber Bridge by LCC engineers, mechanics, or through our own depot. LCC have brought together a testing criteria which they would have to pass, which tests the structural soundness of the seats, how they're bolted in, stress tests, the actual lift weight loader tests on the back of the lift. So that actually tests the aspects of the actual modification, where the IVA, the feedback we were getting was things like the private hire plates that we provide wasn't rounded enough on the edges and things like that. He wasn't actually bringing back feedback which was actually to do with the actual modification. It was to do with other things that it was failing on.
Alan, is that okay? I think you're muted, Alan.
No, done it again, Chair, sorry. Yeah, so in terms of the testing by local engineers, then there are only 2 possible sources of that test, if I'm picking up correctly. Will they be actually working to a written set of test criteria so that both tests are consistent with each other?
Yes, they are. Basically, LCC already test these vehicles before they go on school contracts. So they have a list of criteria that it must pass before they'll put it on a school contract. So the test that they'll actually be performing is the same test that they are already performing on these vehicles. So currently they are pretty much doubling up on the work anyway, so these vehicles are being tested before they go on for a school contract.
Okay, Alan, you okay with that? Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments, please? No? Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for your input. Thanks, Chris. Okay, as we would normally do, we need to get this one voted on. So if there's no dissenters on the vote, we are going to approve. And what I forgot to do last time is bring in Taz as our trusted legal advisor to say, if that's okay, Taz?
That's fine, Chair.
Thank you, Taz. Spotted, Ruth. The team's working well tonight. We are looking for a proposer and a seconder, please. So can we have a raise of a hand for the proposer, please? We'll take Keith Martin again. A seconder, please. Anyone? Jane Bell. Thank you very much. Okay, that one's approved. Thanks, everyone. Right, item number 7. You'll be surprised to know that we're over to Chris again. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this item 7 is related to consultation feedback regarding tinted windows policy. So on the 12th of November 2019, members of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee received a report from officers which highlighted issues found with the current policy regarding tinted windows on licensed vehicles. The officer at the meeting explained that the current policy only permits tinted windows which have a minimum of 70% light transparency currently on the policy. Since the policy was introduced, the licensing authorities received complaints from the trade that the policy is restrictive and drivers struggle to source vehicles which meet the policy's requirements. Drivers often report back that vehicles can only be sourced with light transparency of 70%, which are of a lower grade and a range within each vehicle. Changes to the windows on a vehicle can be extremely expensive for drivers. Officers contacted BMW and Volkswagen, who stated that the current tint within their vehicles ranged between 18% and 82%. Officers do find that when they're testing new vehicles on application, that the light transparency is very little difference between 50% window transparency and 70% transparency to the naked eye. The main objective with restricting the tint on vehicles is so that passengers in the back of the vehicle can be visible to other members of the public, thus increasing safety for both the passengers and the drivers. Members are advised that many local authorities are now choosing to reduce the percentage of transparency on tinted windows. The following options were proposed by officers. Option 1 is to continue to allow 70% light transparency as normal, and no change to the policy. Option 2 is to reduce the levels of transparency on the tinted windows to 50% without the need for any CCTV. Option 3 would be to allow the vehicle tinted windows with a proposed light transparency of between 30% and 49% on the understanding that CCTV systems would be installed to the satisfaction of the council. Any vehicle with less than 30% light transparency would not be allowed to be licensed. The proposal is to amend the policy and proceed with option 2 to an agreed reduced transparency level of tinted windows of no less than 50% in licensed vehicles without the need of CCTV. The only change required is an amendment to the policy wording stated 50% instead of 70% in respect of hackney carriage and private hire vehicles windows, as shown in section 10 of this report. The approval of option 3 would lead to a wide range of significant legal issues that would need to be taken into account. The addition of CCTV would require the production of a policy governing the installation and data management. Any system installed would need to conform with the ICO Information Commissioner standards relating to GDPR and DPA. A list of these issues can be found in section 19 and 20 of this report. They include issues with GDPR, a list of approved installers that would be required, A code of conduct of using the actual CCT would need to be adhered to. A detailed specification of the equipment, certificates of installation, a privacy impact assessment would also be needed. Officers feel this could be quite onerous to manage for both drivers and officers. Members agreed at the meeting of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee on the 12th of November 2019 that the changes to the policy regarding the tinted windows in private hire and hackney carriage vehicles should be subject to a consultation exercise, and results will be brought back to this committee in the next possible meeting. On the 10th of March, members of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee were advised that the consultation period had taken place throughout January and February. Again, as with the modified vehicle consultation, feedback had been provided that the questions were too technical and the internet format was not user-friendly. At the meeting in March 2020, officers asked the committee to go out to consultation again on this matter, with the option of the paper format to increase accessibility. Members were advised that report detail and the outcome of the consultation would be brought before the committee at a future meeting. Members agreed the consultation was to be redone. A new consultation took place between the 21st of September 2020 and the 2nd of November 2020. Advisory letters were sent to all operators and paper feedback forms provided to every licensed driver. The results of the consultation exercise have been again extremely positive. As you can see within section 14 to 18 of this report, full consultation feedback is available attached to this report as Appendix A. 39 responses were received in total. 100% of the responses were in favour of a change to the current policy restricting the windows to 70% light transparency. Over 90% of the consultees wanted the implementation of option 2 or 3. 2 responses were unsure as what changes should be suitable. The remaining 3 people said no to all options presented. Members are now asked to consider the recommendation of option 2 from officers and decide whether now to forward the proposed changes to the full council with a recommendation to adopt the changes to the taxi licensing policy in relation to modified vehicles, tinted windows.
Thanks, Chris. I'm just going to bring in Taz first, just to add to what Chris has just presented. Taz?
Just one point that I've noted from the report, Chair. Section 11 of the actual report refers to the current policy as it stands in respect of private hire vehicle and also the amendments that are being proposed. There is a mistake within that, which it refers to the proprietor or private hire vehicle of exceptional quality and exclusive use for executive hire work, rather than saying a minimum that the actual transmission would be a minimum of 70% light transmission. It says a maximum of 70% light transmission. So there is a mistake in that. It doesn't affect in respect of the response from the consultation, because the questions that were asked in respect of the consultation was to do with the minimum aspect of it. So it's just a typo there in respect to that. It's paragraph 11 of the actual report. I don't know whether anybody else has picked up on that.
No, but well done, Taz. Well spotted. So we'll get that corrected. So we're going to invite members now for any comments, please, on another good report from Chris. Councillor Jane Bell, please.
Thanks ever so much. Am I right in understanding that the difference between the 50% and 70% visuality is negligible? It's very similar. But my concern is, and it was mentioned, about the safety of passengers in the back seat. So if you can't see through the window, you can't see what's going on. So that would be a major, as far as health and safety and safeguarding youngsters and, and all the stuff that can go on in the back of taxis. And I don't actually remember. Anyway, we won't go into that. But what I'm thinking about the health and safety side. So are we not better off on the 50% rather than the 70%, or is it a negligible difference in what you can see and what you can't see? Thanks.
Thanks, Jane. Chris? Thanks, Jane.
The 50% windows are darker than the 70%, so the higher the number, the more light can be transparent. So if you look at any vehicle that's on the road at the moment, has to have the front 2 windows and the front window has to be 70% or more light transparency. What we've found is with vehicles that are 50% and above, you can see through the windows just the same. They might have a slight coloured tint on or something like that, but you can perfectly see through who is in the back of the vehicle. It's when you get down to percentages of 30, 35% that the windows are what you would think are normal tints that you get on like an executive vehicle or something like that. When they start getting below that figure, you can't see through the window. So at 50%, we found that the visibility, you can see whoever's in that vehicle. They just might be slightly more tinted than the ones that are 70%, where you're looking at, they might have a green dull tint on them or a blue tint on them just slightly, but it's still completely visible through the window.
Is that okay, Jane? Is that okay? Okay, thank you. Councillor Martin, please, then Councillor Molyneux.
Thank you, Chair. I sort of looked into this and I had chats with officers earlier on about it, and I support option 2. And the reason for that is option 3 obviously causes issues with GDPR. It'll be an administrative nightmare, especially if people want subject access requests on the video that was taken whilst there was in that cab. That could go back. The other thing, and Jane's quite right to look at health and safety, is obviously the darker the window, the less chance you have of seeing inside, hence the need for CCTV inside. But it would also have an impact on the control and manoeuvrability of the vehicle. For instance, if you've got dark windows, you can't see out to reverse. So in that light, if we were going to go down to below 50%, I would recommend that we looked at insisting that they have some sort of reversing aid, either a camera or some sort of audible device. The audible device would be handy for people who cannot see reversing lights, or if the reversing lights are not on because they're not part of an MOT test. The other side would be that a lot of times these taxis could be reversing at night time with limited visibility to the rear. So option 2 would sort of satisfy all of that and remove any additional risks. Cheers.
Thanks, Keith. Peter?
Thank you, Chair. From my point of view, I'm happy to go with option 2. I can see the reasons why we'd want to go from that. I'm a little bit disappointed that we had an opportunity on option 3 to bring in cameras, which I feel are quite important, and the number of cases and problems that we have where it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You know, if we get an opportunity to get cameras, I think it would be able to sort out a lot of the problems. The drivers would have to realise if they didn't have the cameras on, then that's down to them. Because obviously, from a health and safety point of view, it's both for the passengers and for the drivers to be able to clear themselves, if you like, and not have a situation where it's, you know, I say this, you say that. But as I say, I can see there's at this moment in time probably more problems involved in doing that. So I'm happy to go with option 2 in this case.
Okay, thanks for that, Peter. Either anyone else before I? No. Does anyone want to offer to propose that one then? Councillor Bell?
Yes, I'll propose it.
Thanks, Jane. And a seconder, please. I'll give that one to Jackie Alty. Thanks, Jackie. Okay. So we've got a proposer and a seconder. So once again, if there's no one dissenting from the vote.
Sorry, Chair.
Excuse me. Peter, have you raised your hand again, or is it by a mistake?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was going to second it, but you've obviously asked Councillor Alty, so that's fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. I had about 5 people waving at me at once then, so I just picked one. Thanks for that. Okay, so as we normally do, if there's no one dissenting from the vote, we can take that as approved. Looking on the screen now. So if that's okay with everyone, Taz, you happy to confirm that's approved to go forward? So thanks everyone for that one. Well done again, Chris. Thank you. Okay, we're on to item number 8, use of standing order 35, and we're going to bring in Steph. Steph, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm here today to brief you on 2 urgent decisions that have been made by the use of Standing Order 35. This is, as Chair said, agenda item number 8, and it's page 37 in your report. So firstly, the approval was needed to require a temporary change to our taxi licensing policy in relation to driver medicals. During the pandemic, drivers were struggling to obtain certificates of medical fitness from their own GPs and doctors' surgeries, as they'd suspended the full services that they were offering to their patients. A decision was granted to allow a temporary change to the policy to permit drivers to use medical practitioners. If they couldn't get in with their own GPs, they would be able to perform their medical checks on their behalf. These medical practitioners must have had access to full driver medical history in order to be able to qualify to undertake such a task. Full details of this report, this can be found as background document 1, if anybody wants to read through that. The second use of the standing order was the adoption of the cafe pavement licences. So the COVID-19 pandemic affected many businesses across the economy, causing them to cease trading for several months. Others had to adapt the way of working. So as the economy started to reopen in June of this year, the government announced a further and urgent relaxation of licensing laws to help the hospitality industry recover from the pandemic. With such an announcement came the cafe pavement licences. So an urgent decision was required to allow officers to administer this type of new licence that was introduced by the government. The cafe pavement licences was designed to be for a temporary period only, allowing licensees to have until September 2021. The type of licence would allow a business to use furniture placed on the highway in front of their premise to sell or serve food and drink, with obviously following socially distant guidelines. So due to the new restrictions, people were restricted with how many people they could actually have inside the cafes, the bars and the restaurants. Since we have introduced this, we've only granted 3 types of these licences. And again, all the details of that report can be found as background document 2. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Steph. Another good report. Okay, open to the floor, please. Any comments on this from members? Ruth's just giving me my order as we speak. Thank you, Ruth. And then we're going to go with Councillor Ogilvie and then Councillor Bell. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just a quick one. In relation to the alternative GP medical arrangements having access to the previous medical history, can you clarify, how did we ensure that that was in fact the case for occasions where it was done by a different GP?
Okay, thanks for that, Alan. Taz? Sorry, Alan, could you just repeat that, please? Taz needed to hear that one. She didn't quite get it.
Yeah, no problems. In the cases where someone went for a medical examination by a GP other than themselves, other than their own GP, how did we ensure that that alternative GP had in fact the full background medical history of the person requesting the test?
Okay, Taz.
Yeah. So it was a requirement that obviously when the individual went to the other GP, they would obviously provide a full access of documents. So ordinarily, there are companies out there that we have been in touch with. There is a company that has access to our medical forms, and obviously they know full well that before they can actually sign that off, and they know that obviously that our policy requires that there is obviously a full access of medical records before it's actually signed off. So I think that answers your question.
Alan, is that okay?
Okay, yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you. Jane, over to you.
Hello, thanks. Yeah, can I just say, lots of lovely reports, and I've read them all. I'm just surprised only 3 cafe licences on Pavement across South Ribble. I would have thought there would have been a lot more, you know, if I'm thinking Penwitham, Bamber Bridge, Leyland. You know, I'm surprised it's only 3. Are there few people putting the chairs out and not getting a licence?
Through you, Chair, there are quite a lot of businesses within South Ribble at the moment that have the use of the front of the premises at the moment. So, for example, there's a bar in Leyland that already offers that, so they wouldn't apply for a further licence because they have that facility already. So, the 3 that we have had, Chris has been out and inspected them to make sure that the area outside the pub or the bar or the restaurant was sufficient enough for people to sit with a table and chair and enjoy a drink or a meal. But really, I think it's due to the nature of a lot of the businesses within the borough already have that facility if they want to use it. And don't forget as well, a lot of businesses decided not to open as well due to current restrictions. So it wasn't business as normal, unfortunately. So that perhaps put a few people off as well.
Okay. Well, thanks. No, I just thought it was a very small number, that was all. Thanks, Steph.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. Thanks, Jane. It's a good question. I think it's a combination of all those things, Jane. Time of year, places already having opportunities to open and some not opening at all. So thanks for that, Steph. Councillor Molyneux, please, and then Councillor Martin.
Yeah, it was just to do with the question that Councillor Ogilvie mentioned about medical information, whether data protection it's all tied up, and you mentioned that they would have to have the necessary paperwork. So are we saying that if that was my information being passed over to another practitioner, that I would have to give the okay for that, or they would have to accept? How would that work? Because I think data protection comes into this.
Thanks. It's a task one for you.
Yeah, it's the individual that would actually consent to providing that information to the other GP. So it'd be a consent. Consent would actually come into that.
Is that okay, Peter? Okay, yeah, presume that. Yeah, okay. Keith Martin, Councillor Keith Martin, please.
Thanks,
Okay, thanks. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. I've already discussed this with officers. There's a few anomalies within the pavement licensing policy, which, in a nutshell, it's about the security of the furniture, some electrical information I was after. That there is two conflicting parts of, two conflicting wording of the policy with regard to patio heaters. And there is an issue with the washing down of the pavement, but what I'll be doing for that is be emailing yourself or licensing for that to come to the leader and let him decide, along with the monitoring officer, if that needs to be amended. It's just an observation, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Keith. Back over to you, Alan. Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just in relation to the pavement licence, the cost of £100, very quickly, where did that figure come from? What's the basis for it? And was it in fact recoverable by the business from some kind of government grant somewhere? Thank you.
Through you, Chair, I believe that was set by central government. Okay.
For that, Steph, and some of them may have got grants, but if they were closed, there was a range of grants recently which maybe covered probably that amount of money, I think, in terms of that expense. So is that okay, Alan?
Yeah, okay, thanks for that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks everyone. Any other comments, please? Okay, well, we're looking for a proposer.
Chair, that's just for noting.
Thanks for that. Thanks, Saz. Thanks. That's one's for noting. Thanks. Okay. Right, we're up to item number 9, everyone. Before we proceed with the following item, we need to consider the exclusion of the press and public on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 2 of part 1 of the Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as information related to any individual. So therefore, on that basis, what we're going to propose now is just a short 5-minute comfort break while we get the press and the public offline, please, and the YouTube feed will now cease. So thanks everyone who's been watching for attending and taking an interest.